the focus now to discussion segment where we told you we had a lot lined up for you, and of course it's time to have it. Every day Nigerians are presented with statistics. We hear about inflation, unemployment, poverty, economic growth, school enrollment, healthcare, government spending, and other indicators used to measure the state of the country. But behind every statistics is a human being. Behind a poverty figure is a family trying to survive. Behind an unemployment figure is someone searching for an opportunity. And also behind a development program is a community hoping that something will actually change. Well, this morning we're taking a step beyond the numbers to see how this pans out, Mukhtar.
Of course, we're taking the step, like you rightly said, beyond numbers, and we're asking what years of research, development, and working directly with Nigerians, what it has taught us about the country beyond all of those numbers and statistics that we tend to hear. Because the reason why we are doing that is that every program can look successful on paper, but does it really bring meaningful change to those communities? Do we see their lives getting better? Aside all of the statistics, because we've seen some communities achieve remarkable things that never happened in the official statistics. So that's the question we're asking. How does the reality on ground match all of those statistics that we have on paper? Do they really align or do they not? That's the essence of this conversation today.
Well, quite timely conversation to have, Mukhtar, because of course, like we had earlier in our conversation, we said it was time to have all of this put out right for Nigerians to understand, also the world at large, to see how this perspective runs. To help us explore this, we're joined by Tijani Abdul Karim. He's the Executive Director of the Social Economic Research and Development Center, SEDEC, right? If I'm correct.
Yeah, of course. Good morning, listeners.
Thank
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here this morning to talk about this, to join this conversation.
Well, I see from your CV already tells it all.
Very impressive.
Well, because as a development professional, you understand what it is in terms of community mobilizing, social activism, and also human rights advocates with experience working around social economic development, governance, citizen participation, and community level intervention. So we look forward to having a swell time.
Of course.
On all of this. Thank you so much for your time with us. Mukhtar, want to help us buy into this?
Like we said before, the statistics. Let's start with every number that we hear every day. We tend to hear all of those numbers. We have statistics telling us inflation is rising or falling. We hear that the government is saying the economy has improved. All of these things, are they reaching the people? That's the question. After years of working in development yourself, Nigeria's real statistics, do they really capture the story that you tend to see on ground in the communities that you work with?
All right, thank you so much, Mukhtar, for having me. So I just don't want to, first of all, this morning start this conversation with boring listeners or viewers with the various statistics and data that we see every day. But what this conversation should focus on is on how realistic, what is the impact, what are the results from there. And I can tell you that we've been in this sector as a development professional and researcher. We've also implemented so many programs that also looks around improving the basic livelihood of young people and even Nigerians. But I can tell you that over the past decade, successive governments have come up with development programs. We've seen programs like the Shopee, we've seen programs like the N-Power. Then we see these governments again also have coming up with their own various Renew Hope the different intervention programs. And I could tell you clearly that the problem with development program implementation in Nigeria is the fact that there is a lack of coordination, and there is no way you can actually measure some of these results, even when government keep telling us that okay, this program, this is what we have achieved so far, but what are the results, what are the impact? There is that thin line that has become very difficult to link the implementation of project intervention program with results of those interventions. And I can tell you clearly that if you look at the life of ordinary Nigeria over the past, in fact, with the coming into government, with the Tinubu administration, there were so many economic crises that had happened that had already affected the basic livelihood. we saw the crisis around the inflation. We saw the crisis around the removal of the fuel subsidy that had, the Nigerian economy is always tied to oil. So immediately anything happens to oil, it affects every sector.
Yeah.
So with the removal of that subsidy, it affected the wages, it affected prices of food, because even farmers, they have to transport those goods, and in the process of transporting, fuel needs to be those vehicles need to be filled, and all those things affected everything. And you could see that even despite the fact that Nigeria had a lot of gains around the sustainable development goals over the years from implementing so much intervention program, it rolled back those achievements because it forced a lot of people into poverty. People's wages are no longer able to sustain their basic livelihood. Look at even here in Abuja, where we could see that how much, look, if you remove the cost of transportation, remove the cost of buying of food, remove the cost of even the high rate of cost of rents, at the end of the day, workers are left with nothing to even pay children's school fees or even take care of other loved ones. So these are the challenges that most of this economic crisis had helped in reshaping and causing a decline in the basic livelihood of Nigerians.
So I like the fact that you had to give us a background
Very
so
important.
we understand where this stands for us as a nation and where the challenges comes out most times to play. And so one thing I want to ask basically, does that mean that sometimes we measure the developments incorrectly when we see the job done?
Especially based on numbers.
Yeah, I think that is one mistake that many people implementing intervention programs are doing, because most times you have a unique project design, and at the end of the day, the right people that this intervention needs to get to are not the people that these interventions are getting into. Take for instance, we had to call we had the cost of doing a review of some of the government intervention program a few years back, and we got to understand that during the time that the government was implementing what it called the conditional cash transfer under the last administration,
yes,
we noticed that because we had a project that was supported by the UK through what's called the Mantra project through ANEJ, and while implementing that project, we got to realize that yes, because part of what we're doing on that project was to monitor how this conditional cash transfer was implemented. And through the conditional cash transfer, you had government were supposed to identify the poorest of the poor within communities and provide some finances to those households to improve their basic livelihood. So in the course of tracking most of those in implementation of that intervention program, we got to realize that if you go to some communities, you could see that most of the lists that were being created from those communities were a list of friends, family members, and other community members that were not, you can't even identify them as poor.
Not the vulnerable people.
Not the vulnerable people, not the real people that are supposed to benefit from those intervention programs. So at the end of the day, the government may have a good intention that okay, this is what I want to do, but most times implementation phases is exposed to corruption risks that also helps in that also at the end of the day it sort of destabilize the whole program, because at the end of the day, maybe the target of the government is to reduce the number of people living in poverty and also, let's say, reach out to more households. But at the end of when this program is being implemented, you will see that it's another different kind of beneficiaries that actually benefited from that program. So this is the challenge of program implementation in this country, where government decide that you can sit in Abuja, or you can just identify some people within communities or even political party members to lead programs like this. It leads to weak implementation of those programs in communities.
Now, I'd like for us to look at an aspect that is often, in my opinion, overlooked, which is the people themselves. We oftentimes see these people as beneficiaries of the help from government, But is there not? Don't you think they should also be included in helping to find solutions?
Of course.
Rather than just being beneficiaries of
Of course,
this.
I think that's the right thing to do. You know, there is this concept. In 2016, Nigeria signed on to a global framework called the Open Government Partnership. I don't know whether you're aware of that, but there is this what is called the Open Government Partnership. My organization, we were a member of the National Steering Committee of the Open Government Partnership. And when the Open Government Partnership is all about inclusion. Governments see the need for government and civil society to sit down together on a table and look at how we can roll out and implement programs that it identify that very, very important to the citizens. And in the course of implementing the OGP, in fact, the OGP framework alone is what made about 29 states have already adopted and signed on to the OGP process in Nigeria. And I can tell you, the OGP, the results you get from implementing the OGP has shown very clearly that government reform can only work perfectly when government, citizens, and civil society sit together on a round table, identify those reforms that is important, look at the need assessments of those reports, yes, and co-implement those reforms. And I can tell you that we have successive, like Nigeria had done the first national action plan, the second and third action plan. We are now planning for the fourth action plan.
Yes.
States like Kogi State, like Plateau State, are shining examples. Even Kaduna State are shining examples of how government, citizens, and civil society organizations can come together, co-implement in an intervention programs, and see how they can achieve results. So it's a very, very important way. Inclusion is very important. Yes. If you want to achieve development success in whatever development intervention you are implementing, ensure that you bring citizens and civil society together to co-implement with you.
Okay, so we have this, just like you mentioned, you need to understand the people, understand their basic needs, understand what goes out for them. If not, your what's it called, solution provision
would not work.
Won't
work.
It will make sense, because let's take, for instance, from the legislature point of view, where I know civil society also talked to the legislature to see how they come in and also look at their pet projects, which they call constituency projects. Yeah. So all of that. So how do you help them identify the people that really need this thing? Because sometimes if you go and provide bore where bore is not needed.
Exactly.
They go where there are roads.
Actually, when we're talking about the constituency project, I belong to the school of thought that sees it as a fraud in Nigeria.
Okay.
Why?
Because my reason for seeing constituency project as a fraud in Nigeria is because it's being used as a way to siphon public fund. We have seen very clearly from various research that you look, if you check online, you can see so many research from core civil society organizations like Budget, like CISLAG, the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, and even PLAC. Most of those organizations that are working around working around legislative intervention. You see those reports that shows very clearly the level of corruption in constituency projects. So you'll be found that it is not done with the people. You could see that most time is done as a way to patch the back of the legislators. That's the way the constituency project is programmed in Nigeria. And I think Nigeria had several years of sustainable democracy. I think it's high time Nigerians sit down to see how we can come up with the right framework around the role legislature needs to play when it has to do with constituency project. There should be some basic checklist that even gives them the right to put in constituency projects in the budget. Take, for instance, in other places you will see that there is a checklist of how you can engage with communities. There's a report that says, okay, I've done this social community intervention. I had my community from Ward A, Ward B, Ward C, Community A, Community B, Community C has come together and said that, okay, collectively what we want in this constituency is a borehole or a hospital or a market. Then at that time, you as a legislator, you call for a town hall meeting, speak with the community on what is their need. Actually, we all know that it is not the role of a legislator to do all those projects. But in Nigeria, it has become, when you occupy political office, the people always look out to you to do something
everything for them.
So since it has become a culture, and there's no way you can tell legislators that this is not your role, you can't do it, because they know if they go back to their constituency, the constituency hold them responsible that okay, these are the things
we sent you to represent us there.
They send you to represent or ensure that you make sure this
thing.
Exactly. So and aside from going to make law, if not those constituency projects, there's no budget that comes to them that they can actually use in supporting their community. So the whole thing is designed around fraud, and we can, if we want to give it legitimacy, we should create checklists and framework for how the legislators can put in constituency projects in the budget through a structure that has to do with citizen engagement, town hall meetings, and community acceptance through a need assessment framework.
Okay, so I like the fact that you talked about the community acceptance, because that's like the knowledge base is a problem. That's what we see basically these days. So how important is local knowledge in determining whether a development intervention succeeds or should be the right thing to be done? Because from what we see from the legislative point of view now, they just feel it is the work or the role of the legislators. But from your perspective, how are you also advocating and also informing this what's called the community now, or the constituencies now, that there are things that
they can do
without
even the government?
Actually, communities are aware that legislators have no budget. They are not executive.
So why do they give them so much pressure?
But you see, politics in Nigeria has been built around those kind of favoritism. Okay. Those kind of design that gives so much from public office holders. I can tell you, even if you're not an elected person, public official, immediately you get a political appointment in this country, all the community members they will be on your shoulder. That's the way people are programmed in this country. That puts so much burden on public office holders, and that's why it's also important that we need to improve citizen public awareness around certain rules that people need to understand very clearly. But then you begin to see the way the legislature himself is designed. We have a legislation that they feel that it's also a responsibility for them to put in constituency projects in the budget. Most times this constituency project is not actually because they have that care or feeling for that community or that constituency. But like I said earlier, it's self-centered. It's a way to siphon public funds
and also get their share.
Exactly. You could see that most times. Look at the recent. There was this report that came out by Tracker, an organization that tracked project implementation in Nigeria. You could see that organizations like Border Community Development Commission, so many organizations that has nothing to do with constituency project implementing project. How can you a health center will be implementing projects that has to do with education?
That's a mismatch.
Yeah, and exactly. So they try to just look for certain agencies of government to just push in constituency project, and they go there with their own contractors. That's what they do, because there are several reports. If you showing very clearly that they go there with their own contractors, ensure that those monies get to their contractors, who in fact, there is this cycle of money laundering. I think the EFCC needs to do more, even in going into to begin to see how money is being laundered through constituency project, because there is a huge level of corruption that is being done in the name of constituency projects in Nigeria.
Now let's look at the aspect of still back to the communities now. Yeah. We've seen where interventions come, and some of these communities, they don't build resilience. They tend to always depend on aid coming from external forces. So how can we make communities go beyond just waiting for aid at each crisis level and being able to be self-subsistent within their own capacity?
Yes, I think communities are actually doing well at some point, because we could see that we've been to some communities that will see that communities engage themselves in supporting themselves when it comes to little infrastructures like irrigation process, road maintenance, even most of those roads, because all these things are happening. Too many weight is going towards in the direction of the legislature because we have a local government system that is not working. You understand? And you know the local government is supposed to be the closest
to the people.
But the local government systems are not working. And the people don't see, in fact, the local government chairman that we see as elected are just as appointed. That's what we see, because the government in power will just go ahead and create a list and share that list with the State Independent Electoral Commission, which is also on the payroll of the government in power at the subnational level.
But the issue of autonomy of the local government, would that change the time?
Of course, when this administration was able to secure a Supreme Court judgment giving local government that autonomy, but we all celebrated that judgment. We all felt that, okay, this government has shown resilience, has shown commitment political will to ensure that the local government gets its footing. But at the end of the day, it just becomes just like a political statement, because we've not seen so much commitment by this administration, the President Bola Tinubu's administration, to drive that political will with certain actions that will ensure local government autonomy.
Well, I like the way they were taking this deep into the political point of view, because with the build up to 2027 general election, there's a whole lot of expectation from citizens,
the government and the
citizens. From the government as well. So we're looking for how that balance can be, where we talked about earlier about public trust, where we know there are a lot of reforms coming in, but how can we reach the poorest of the poor? Because when campaign starts, you see all manner of style of campaign,
of course,
door to door, every of it.
You see stipends and peanuts handed to people.
So I'm trying to see how the minds of citizens can be better structured, if that's the word to use, to know what the dividends of democracy is. And it starts from that campaign period, where you can hold people accountable. So also is the job of civil society groups who want the betterment for people. So what's the workload? What's the strategy and plans your organization is putting out to equip the minds of citizens? So
at my organization, Socio-Economic Research and Development Center, what we do is that we, especially now that the elections are coming close, we know that the political of public, those that are aspiring for public offices will always come up with their agenda, their propaganda, their vision, their mission, and all that, to convince citizens to vote for them. And so what we do is that we try to, like in the last election, before the last election, what we did was we had a series of a town hall meeting with especially young people. We believe that the young people are a strong force in every election. We had those town hall meetings, citizen engagement sessions, where we provided them with the right information on how they can engage those aspiring for public offices. Because that engagement even starts from local. While they campaign to those communities, we encourage them that yes, they should provide what is called community charters of demands, or like citizens charter of demand. So that when they come and tell you that, okay, this is why I'm aspiring for social office, you tell them, okay, this is our demand. Can you sign these demands? Tell us among those in the list of all this, that which one you can help us to achieve. So we can start engaging. Citizens can start engaging public as aspirants for public office in a strategic way, to ensure that when they are elected, you hold them accountable, because accountability is very, very important in all this phase, because citizen has a responsibility to hold public officers accountable. And when we don't do that, this whole thing comes back to us, because when you begin to accuse government for not providing that road, for not providing that hospital, for not providing that water, you should also be speaking to yourself. How have you engaged government? What have you done? What role have you played in ensuring that government provide those basic infrastructures and amenities that are required of your community?
Another aspect I would like for us to talk about is still bringing back to the government and people relations in terms of community. We tend to see development plans, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of them As all of those plans are in paper, but they don't produce good results oftentimes. Where is the gap, and how can we bridge that gap?
Yeah, the reason, like I said, that they don't produce those, first of all, is the structural design of those development plans. Most times you see development plans that are self-centered, even in the implementation. You will see that most of them have political undertone. When you have development plan, you say, okay, let's focus on members of my political party. When you have development plan that says, let's focus, I want you to focus more on people from my region, or from my community, or from my state. So at the end of the day, there is no transparency, there is no accountability. You also have if you also have development plan that are not inclusive. When you have a development plan that you do not involve the people, the society organizations, even ordinary citizens to be part of the design and the implementation, those development plans tend to fail. You understand? Another aspect you look at is the corruption aspect. Most development plans in Nigeria, there is no, what I refer to as, there is no, they didn't conduct a corruption risk assessment. When you do not do a corruption risk assessment of those development plans, then you, at the end of, during the process of implementing those development plans, you end up making that plan vulnerable to corruption. And that's why you see, like the example I gave you earlier about government sincerity to implement a conditional cash transfer, build a register that is that ensures that the money gets to the right people. But at the end of the day, because of they did not come up with the right corruption risk framework to assess what are the likely corruption that
the loopholes that could be exploited.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, you see that those loopholes that you did not identify becomes a problem in the implementation of that development plan.
Okay, so my concern basically is on sustainability, because you've done this over time, you understand how this works out. So let's talk about sustainability, especially in Nigeria, with its own peculiarity in terms of what we see. You've mentioned corruption being a problem. You've mentioned where people need to be knowledgeable about what is needed.
And lack of inclusivity.
And, you know, so all of that is what is important. So talk to us where we have seen many programs launched with great expectations, only for their impact to disappear, you know, once funding or political attention moves elsewhere. And that's a major concern, because that's why I mentioned the issue around election, because as it's coming, promises will be made, you know, but how can projects which have been launched be sustained so that the needed goal of it is really achieved in the long run?
Yeah, so I think most of the challenge we have around project implementation also goes to the fact that it also still revolve around even infrastructure. That's why you see that at some point you see a government starts a road project. When the next government comes, it abandons that project and start looking for its own road projects to award. And that's how it is with also development plan. If you recall, the last administration of the late President Muhammad Buhari started this project they called, I'm just using that as an example here, the NPower. Yes. You can recall that NPower.
Of course.
And you could say, I can tell you that when we did a review of the implementation of the NPower, we got to see that there were a lot of young Nigerians that actually has transited from what that through the NPower had transited into creating businesses for themselves, and also had improved their basic livelihood. But when this administration came, it came up with its own, it abandoned the NPower program and came up with its own programs. Understand? So at the end of the day, we have a culture of not sustaining programs in this country. Even if the government wanted to start its own program, it would have looked at, okay, what has been done and achieved through the NPower, is it working? How can we strengthen it? Even if we are going to rename it, can we redesign it in such a way that it can move to another phase? You understand? That's how development program is supposed to be designed, moving it from one phase to the other. But in Nigeria, what we do is that a government comes into power, starts a development plan, and immediately it leaves government. The next one that comes abandons it, and
a new one starts
a new one.
So
and
continuity is a problem.
Continuity is a problem.
Government is supposed to be a continuum.
Yes, exactly. So we need to have that conversation, especially in the legislative. we need to have that conversation, how we can come up with legislation that strengthen the sustainability around project design. As long as we feel we know that yes, we adopted a program by legislation, government should be able to sustain those programs so that at the end of the day, it moves from phase to phases and strengthen its hold. Because those are the programs that you can actually use in building your indicators around poverty and unemployment. Because if you see that if those programs are implemented perfectly, you can provide the right data for you to use it to measure what have been achieved around unemployment, around the poverty and all that.
Now, I'd like for us to look at one intersection that your organization focuses on, which is evidence in public sector. Because we hear a lot of evidence. We hear that project should be evidence-based.
Yeah.
We hear that government should give us evidence in terms of what they are doing. So what does that really mean in practical terms?
So, naturally, it's data is a very, very important factor when you are designing project or even implementing project, and you cannot get data without having the right evidence.
Okay.
And in the development sector, what we do is wherever government is trying to implement a project, or even we want to implement a project,
Yes.
that is being funded, what you need to do initially is to have that baseline survey. And in the process of doing that baseline survey, you will know exactly where you're starting from and what are the current indicators on ground, and what, with the implementation of your project, within the lifespan of your project, what are the indicators that you expect, that is called the expected outcomes, that you expect at the end of this project, or looking at the first phase of this project. This is the results that we are going to get. And I think almost all development programs in Nigeria, both within the civil society and even the government, are all designed for these basic purposes of looking at what is the current status and how we can improve on that status to get an outcome that we envision. But along the line, the problem with implementing projects in Nigeria, like I keep saying, is the fact that, number one, the political will to sustain those programs, the motive of the administration to that is if it's sincere, because most times, like I say clearly, most program implementation are designed as a way to siphon public funds. Understand? And some are just designed as a way to is it like a kickback or to appease political party, compensate political party members and all that. So if that motives are clearly citizen driven, you will see that most those implementation programs will go in a smooth way. Like I tell you, let me give you an instance. I know when when the Shopee program, if you can recall the Shopee program, when the Shopee program was implemented, that was during Dr. Professor Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. I can tell you that many young entrepreneurs in Nigeria grew from the Shopee program. It's not like I'm not even telling you, because I know so many young people that become established business, that had established businesses that are running, but because government supported them through the Shopee program. So this is how you can measure progress. Several years after the Shopee program, I can still count over 100 small organizations that have benefited from that program and now run businesses, enterprises, because government has supported with that program. That is how you measure development program. Because every day we keep hearing about renewed hope, this renewed hope, that there has, at the end of the day, you have so many programs on ground that government cannot even measure. And most times they'll bring out data and statistics that you cannot actually pinpoint how they are getting these data and all these statistics. So it's only when you involve people, when you build an inclusive project implementation system, that people can also say that, okay, while you are tracking the data on how you are spending your funds on the implementation, let us also track the implementation strategies. Let us also track how we can, what are the likely challenges that will affect effective implementation of those projects. So it's only when you involve a lot of actors in this whole process that you can actually, that the government can actually get it wrong when it comes to project implementation.
there's a whole lot to this conversation.
Certainly
and
is.
It has all sides and coins, because of course you've mentioned we have policies, we have plans. It's not like we lack the ideas to all
It's
of
the
these
implementation
things.
that
No,
actually
Nigerians have great minds with great ideas, and we always have amazing. In fact, so many programs and policies and interventions programs. Most African countries come to this country
To get ideas.
Like with the Open Government Partnership, we started what is called the Beneficial Ownership Register in Nigeria, and in fact in Africa. And I can tell you now, since Nigeria came up with that design of Beneficial Ownership Register, where you can actually track ownership of companies and how to know exactly who are the beneficial owners of companies. Take for instance, we through much corruption in the procurement sector, especially as public officers come up with fictitious companies and use it to divert public fund, awarding the contracts to their own companies. So with the beneficial ownership register, you can be able to track who actually is the beneficial owner of those companies. That was an amazing register that was developed in Nigeria, and I can tell you many African countries are already coming to Nigeria to learn from that
initiative.
Yeah, that initiative. So Nigerians have the right; they have amazing policies, programs, but when it comes to implementation, there's always this selfish mindset around what is the benefit. What is it benefiting me? How is it benefiting my kinsman? How is it benefiting my community? How is it benefiting members of my political party? But immediately you begin to think development in that direction, you have already misled the vision or the mission of that development.
But this initiative we talked about just now, how come we've not been able to use it? Is it deliberate, or was it that they are, in terms of fishing out some loopholes, like we've seen the controversy of a fake agency and all of that? Why hasn't all this technology or initiative been able to flag that up before it happened?
Yeah, you see, like you said about the agencies are not registered the Corporate Affairs Commission. Yes. But actually, with the beneficial register which is being managed by the Corporate Affairs Commission.
Can we extend that to maybe the public service?
Yes, I think public service also that is why we have the head of service, and there's also an organization called the Bureau of Public Service Reform.
Yes.
Yeah. So those are part of the responsibilities of those agencies to ensure that issues like this, government can be able to track what are the reforms that need to be in place to ensure the effective and efficient framework to work around the public sector. But like I said earlier, the problem we have in this country is not the fact that we have two sets of leadership. We have people in leadership position and leadership leaders with vision. So when you look at these two things, you can see a leader. Two people anybody can be a leader, but who has the vision? Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people in Nigeria occupying public offices in Nigeria are just people in leadership position. Many people in Nigeria that are occupying leadership position in Nigeria are just people in leadership position, not leaders with vision. So you could see that because when you have a leader that has a vision, even before he occupied that public office, he already has a design on this is what I want to achieve within these 4 years that I'm going to be there, and I expect that this is my blueprint, and this is my team, and this is at the end of the day when I'm living here in 4 years, at least I can be measured on what I brought to the table that I will be going to implement. But what we see is that people that don't take responsibility, the kind of leaders we have in this country over the past few years are leaders that don't care. In other countries, you see most of the things that are happening in Nigeria, and most of those leaders will shy away from speaking about it. Yes. In other countries, they will be forced to resign. Those leaders will have to resign, even without the public forcing them. They willingly will know that yes, an agency that they lead had also like what is happening even with the fake agency. In a country that works perfectly, there are several agencies that by their leadership by now would have been placed on suspension or even had voluntarily resigned because of inefficiencies. because it's most of those things. If government is saying that there is a fake agency, then there is an act of negligence in the somewhere, and who's supposed to take responsibility? And public funds has been allocated to those agencies.
Even in the budget?
Yes, even in the budget.
Official budget of Nigeria.
And we have an appropriation committee.
Anyway, I like the fact that you raised this because it's a very, very crucial discussion that has been in the front burner, and questions have been asked around all of this. That's why we had to bring this at a timely discussion to talk about all of this. It's one thing to have ideas, just like you mentioned, nothing to have the implementation come out to play and then sustainability plan. But from what you've said so far and from what we've seen, it's easy for you as an expert to detect or know a project that will die off very soon because of the implementation issues and then continuity. So how can this be solved in a way that from experts like you, you have what's it called, town hall meetings, you meet with different stakeholders.
You've got first-hand experience.
First-hand experience. So walk the people through and also talk to policymakers so that, because what we all can't do from our end is advocate and also put out recommendations. So talk to us about how inclusion of people, the very vulnerable people is very important, so that the projects you're doing, that's the market you're selling, can really give you the expected results you're looking for.
Yes, so what you're saying actually is sustainability plan.
Yes. Because
to me, if you are doing any project without an effective sustainability plan, that project will even fail. Because first of all, when we are talking about sustainability plan, we will be looking around issues around the community inclusion, issues around the co-designing and co-implementation, issues around framework, short-term and long-term frameworks for those projects. And most of the project implementation design and interventions in Nigeria, especially by politicians, always live within the lifespan of their time in government. So I think project implementation needs to be driven by public service, not political elected officials or even appointed of officials.
Yes.
We should have a framework where public, that when I'm talking about public service servants now, I'm talking about those working as administrators in those agencies.
Yes.
They should be the core anchor or drivers of those programs. It should be their design. You can decide to come and give it another name, but let there be a project that is designed by that agency of government that is there for you to continue on it. Even if you leave, the project is there. The next person can come and give it another name, but let that program be brought to life. It should stay within that agency or ministry or department of government, and there should be the one that will sustain it. Then another angle you can look at it is having a structure that involves citizen and government on the table. Just like we did with the Open Government Partnership, we have on the state steering national, even at the state, we have on the National Steering Committee, we have 11 civil society and 11 government sitting on the same table, looking at the National Action Plan, looking at what we need to do to improve budget transparency, what we need to do to improve anti-corruption, what we need to do to improve extractive transparency, and all that. So when you sit on the table, even in the next government, because take for like in the National Action Plan was started by President Muhammad Buhari.
Yes.
But when this government came in, we sat on the same table with this with the new leaderships, and look at how we can continue to implement the National Action Plan. So projects should be designed in such a way that there is already a document that says this is how we are implementing this project within these phases. Whichever administration that comes in will continue, and if it leaves, another administration that comes in should continue on that project. So unless we agree on that, we'll still be seeing projects that have been done and abandoned running across the country.
Well, it's been a fantastic conversation.
Most definitely. It's been a great one.
Trust me, we needed to really sit and break this down. It was sit at this very town hall
to get the insight and perspective.
The insights of all of this, because if we don't keep track with all of these things, it becomes a failure in the long run.
Of course.
And we know that development work is very crucial at this point, especially for our community base, like we talked about. Because we have the issue of insecurity that's actually affected a lot of people.
Yes, of course.
Poverty line is something else. People are merely surviving on a daily, and we need these interventions to get to them. And the plans, just like you said, we have a lot of policies from different
agencies and all of them,
that come into play. But over time, it don't stay to the long run. And when we have freshmen coming in, it kind of disrupts what we had previously. So it's time we need to understand the maths and follow the sustainable plans and get it out there for Nigerians to benefit in the long run. But before we let you go, in one word, talk to us about Nigerians' mindset, because it's one thing to attack the government, it's one thing to say government is not doing this. Our behavioral attitude to things. Because 2027, community members need to understand that it is your life you're playing with. You're going to 2027 under election cycle, and it's under 4 years. When they give you something small, you just sit back and ask, what can our mindset change to know that the government is not because they are just there, you put them in office, and you need to hold them accountable so that the dividends of democracy can get to you, not just at that minute of the electoral process.
Well, for citizens and civil society organizations and for other citizens, I think what's important is that we need to keep engaging. We need to be able to always hold government and public office holders accountable, and we need to have the right framework to be at the table. Because there is this adage that says if you're not on the table, so you won't be part of what is being discussed.
Yes.
So citizens have a responsibility to be on that table to discuss. We must engage. We should not allow flimsy political differences to be the reason why we are not on the table. As citizens, we have a responsibility. Government will come, government will go. But we have, our community stays. We have a right to ensure that we engage government, we hold them responsible, and ensure that the right thing is done to improve basic livelihood.
Well, that's a fantastic way to wrap it up. You've been very amazing at your work with CIDA. Of course, your expertise has actually shown that you understand what this should look like for the Nigerian people. And we hope that Nigerians watching our moment understand this narrative and will also keep their heads on track and understand that if you don't do what is right for yourself, trust me, at the end of the day, the government will come and go, just like he mentioned.
But the country remains, and the community is still going to be there. Of course. The consequence of our actions or inactions will always be there for us to face as community people.
So until we change our mindsets, we will just stay in the same circle. Thank you so much, our guest, Tijani Abdulkareem, for your wonderful time with us. It's been beautiful having you speak to us. That's the Executive Director of SEDEC. He's been fantastic with what development work should look like in Nigeria, and also align with other clients, and we look forward to seeing the Nigerian system adopt that mindset and give us the best picture of what Nigeria should be in developmental work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right, and of course, this is the size of this particular discussion segment, and we look forward to having our engagements. And of course, we told you earlier we have a lot of things wrapped up. Mukhtar.
Of course, we talked about development. Now we'll have to talk about one area which has an impact development, which is insecurity, and that conversation will obviously come in the 10 o'clock hour, and it's one that I know our viewers would not want to miss.
Of course, that's something you would not want to miss at all. So please stay with us. We'll be right back after this time.